Invasive species are non-native to the habitat they are invading and can cause harm to the environment, economy, or even humans. It's important not to confuse invasive species with non-native species. Unlike invasive species, non-native species are not harmful to our environment. An invasive species must alter the ecosystem in some negative manner.
Well, there's a lot of terms that are used to describe invasive species, and oftentimes they're used interchangeably. And a non-native species is typically a species that occurs outside of its native range, and usually is introduced through some human-mediated movement. An invasive species, likewise, is a species that lives outside of its native range, but one added thing about an invasive species is that it's a species that's having some sort of ecological or economic impact, whereas a non-native species might be just there but not really having any effect on the environment or on the economy or anything like that. So.
Many of these invasive species are introduced accidentally. They can be transported through ships attaching to various places such as shipping crates. Human activity can also play a role in bringing these invasive species. After reaching their non-native habitat, they can disrupt food chains and ecosystems, often causing the other native organisms to starve or even die. Some invasive species can directly harm humans. For instance, the fire ant is known for its painful and itchy bites, and they can also attack pets and livestock. Fire ants are native to South America, near the Paraguay River. They were first introduced to the United States in Mobile, Alabama in the 1930s. They are believed to have been living in soil used in ship ballasts. Ships used for trading and travel are a common way of introducing invasive species. Now fire ants can be found all over the southern part of the United States. Invasive species are not limited to animals. One of the most popular invasive species in the United States is actually a plant. Kudzu, a quickly growing plant, is native to Japan and was brought to the United States in 1876 for the Philadelphia Centennial Exposition. Its original purpose was to help farmers minimize soil erosion in their fields. However, kudzu grows extremely fast, up to a foot per day, and is difficult to get rid of. Kudzu has a vast root system that can only be rid of by cutting the vines every month for 2 growing seasons. If kudzu is not controlled, it can kill other plants by choking or smothering them. This powerful plant can even break tree branches. A biological agent to contain kudzu has still yet to be found. Many invasive species also live in water. One common example of an aquatic invasive species is the sea lamprey. This parasitic eel-like fish has a mouth like a suction cup that can latch onto other fishes and suck their blood. Originally native to the Atlantic Ocean, sea lampreys first invaded Lake Ontario in the 1800s through shipping canals. Now they are found throughout the Great Lakes and are considered one of the most destructive invaders of the Great Lakes. One adult sea lamprey can kill up to 40 pounds of fish during its lifetime. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is currently doing its best to reduce the amount of sea lamprey in the ocean, and their efforts have been rather successful, removing up to 90% of sea lamprey in the Great Lakes through chemical resources. Lionfish are a more recent example of an invasive species, as they were only noticed in the Atlantic Ocean a few decades ago. They were originally found in the warm waters of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. The problem is thought to have developed from a few captive species released during Hurricane Andrew, and this is yet another example of how captive animals have been released into the wild by mistake. Their reach has affected areas all across the Gulf, from Texas to Florida. They are currently undergoing a rapid expansion throughout the Mediterranean Sea, and they continue to pop up in new locations due to humans accidentally and purposefully introducing them to new environments. Lionfish have become such a large issue because other fish would rather starve than attack these fish, as they have extremely painful stings. As a result, lionfish thrive while other fish may die out due to a decrease in their habitats and available food source. Lionfish can be easily tracked due to their flamboyant appearance, and many methods are being taken across the world to address the issues of these invasive species. One invasive species that has made its way to several countries is the cane toad. Cane toads, which are native to South America, secrete poisonous toxins out of glands on the back of their heads that will kill their predators. In South America, predators have evolved and are resistant to the cane toad's toxins, but in new places like Australia, however, predators are killed by this toxin. Cane toads were introduced to Australia from Hawaii in the 1930s to help sugarcane plantations that were being hit hard by beetles. It was thought that the toads would manage to kill the beetles, but the plan backfired. Cane toads couldn't even get to the larvae underground, and the adult beetles flew too high to reach them. Cane toads reproduce very rapidly, and their tadpoles are even toxic, so predators can die within minutes after eating these toads. They are now invasive in Florida and eat native wildlife like birds and frogs. Dr. Daniel Warner, a professor in the Biological Sciences Department at Auburn University, did his PhD in Sydney, Australia, where he was exposed to a laboratory that did extensive cane toad research.
So when a predator tries to eat it, they'll either spit it out right away or they'll get poisoned and die. There's evidence of birds being poisoned, monitor lizards, some other frogs, some mammals, and so on. There hasn't been any real documentation of any extinctions in Australia due to the cane toad. But there probably is some impact on some populations, but I think there still needs to be a lot of research done to look at that.
Research is currently being done to devise a way to control these cane toads.
There have been some proposed methods to introduce viruses into the population or sterile males into the population that might reduce egg fertility. But those haven't been used, and there's concerns with how those sort of, at least the viruses or diseases, might impact native frog populations. So it's something that scientists really have to consider carefully if they actually do implement that, because it could have worse effects than intended.
Invasive species can be found anywhere, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. They affect our lives in countless ways.